Okay. Thank you all for being here at the work session of the Philomath City Council. Today is April 14th, 2025, and the time is 5:36 p.m. This is a work session to go over the revised revisions of the strategic plan and ideally make some decisions around priorities. I'll turn it over to the city manager in just a second to kind of go over what his plans are for kind of the process tonight. But I hope you all had a chance to look over this, and I hope you all sort of have either written down somewhere or just mentally sort of what your top priorities would be out of this. So then we can hear from staff kind of what their top priorities from their operational side is, hear from us what our top priorities from a sort of politics side are, and then ideally a work session with sort of a top 10 list for the year that we can then kind of task our staff with implementing over the course of the year. And that doesn't mean that we'll forget about everything else that's not on that top 10 list. It's just won't be prioritized in the same way as those top 10 things. So as Chelsea said, I really quick had her printout just as a reminder, the results from our most recent sort of community-wide survey, just for what our community said their priorities were. I would encourage you to just keep that in mind as we make our list. Just, you know, we hear a lot about trying to be responsive to the community, and we can do a roll call when I'm done with this. Just sort of an idea of sort of what's on the community's mind, and then Councillor Crocker's not here, which we will establish in a roll call momentarily. But she sent over her top 10, sort of listed out here. Granted, some of them are like everything in this thing, which is that's not how we want. We want to talk about specific action items, although I know Chris and Chelsea are going to kind of go through and put some revisions in there. So just so you know what those papers are. And then I don't think we got anything from Councillor Nielsen, her preferences. So we will confer what we think she might want. But with that, can we do a roll call?
Ben Reddick.
Present.
Spencer Irwin.
Present.
Brent Caseman.
Present.
Richard Salsa.
Present.
Christopher McMorrin.
Present. Thank you very much. And now we'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you. But I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you. I want to especially appreciate the management team for being here. Feels a little bit more like an even. I was looking for like an even 5-on-5 with city reporters, the official here. So feels a little more even, which is great. What I thought would be best to go through this, as we've talked with the management team, is we've gone through this. First and foremost, the action team took all of the objectives that the council worked together to pull in, took each of those and tried to create action items for each of those that we felt were doable, measurable, actionable, things that we could do. And then we've gone through and kind of prioritized those on things that we feel are important to take care of this year, right? And I'll give you a hint, there's more. We're going to talk through, first and foremost, we'll go page by page. Councillor Caseman put a couple of edits in here, and so we'll do that. Some little things. There's a few action items that are really, some are duplicates, so we'll fix those. There's a few objective items that we'll get to in theme 3 that are probably better as actionable items as opposed to objectives. So we'll look at that section when we get to it. But essentially, we're going to go page by page and just point out those things that we feel are priorities. As we're doing that, please take note, mark down things that are priorities for us. Also, if I skip over something, and it's really, really important to you and you want to speak to it, just make a note there, because then once we've going through it, and I thought we'd go round robin and go around and let each council member take some time to identify those specific action items that they feel are important that we haven't discussed yet. Essentially kind of advocate on behalf of that action item to the rest of the city council, because then once we've had a chance to hear from each of the council members, then you're going to get your stickers, right? So we're going to do, just so we're going to do 20 stickers each. You're going to take the 20 stickers. On the board is this exact printout. So if you're looking at page number, you can kind of take your notes, and you're going to go and you're going to put no more than 1 sticker for each action item. You're going to load up your favorite action with item with all 20 of your stickers. Right? One sticker per action item. And you identify your top 20 on the list, right? We'll take about a 5-minute break, we'll collect that data, and we're gonna come up with what 10 things got the highest number of votes. What are the next 4 or 5 things on there? Does that make sense? Are you happy with that list? Are there things that maybe 11, 12 that we feel should be number 9 or 10, right? So we'll save some time for conversation in that regard, but where we would like to get at the end of this work session is a pretty solid top 10 that we're very comfortable with, that we can promote to the community. Hey, these are the top things that we're gonna work on and get done this year. Not to say it's the only 10 things we're doing, but this is the 10 we're committed to, we're gonna knock out of the park. We'll do that in our one-pagers, in our social media, our newsletter. Here's the top 10 priorities for the city council based on our work session. Here's the things that we're gonna identify for next year that we're gonna get done, right? Which we won't necessarily promote, but we'll make note in the strategic plan. So there's things that, like budget-wise, we know, for example, we're going for funding this year to try to construct next year. So we can put a note on those. That's for next year. It's a priority 2026. So the strategic plan will have some dates for this year, some dates for next year. I doubt we'll have things for like, well, let's do this, but 3 years out. But if we do, that's fine. We'll make a note of it. But by the end, where we'd like to get to is a spot that when we get into the city council meeting, one of the agenda items is to approve the strategic plan as amended, right? As amended, meaning we've added the dates, we've done the spelling edits, we've corrected some action items. But the reason to put on the city council meeting tonight is we need a date and time that we can say the city council approved this on this date, and that's when it rolled into the budget. Because we're building the budget. We're like getting close to finishing building the budget. And so we need council approval to put these stuff in there so that we can put dollars next to it. If we don't get that far tonight, then we're gonna be really pushing if we don't get that stuff done until May. I mean, it's almost like we're probably gonna have to just get stuff in there with approval, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that the city council's bought off on it. But that's where we're trying to get to tonight. So I fully anticipate there'll be some changes in here. I've already marked some on my sheet. So again, when we get to city council level, we'll look for a motion to approve the strategic plan as discussed, as amended, as modified in this work session. And that's as far as we need to get. I'll make all those changes. We'll get a clean copy on the website, clean copy out to each of you, and we'll have a strategic plan. Okay?
And I think per the council rule updates we made earlier this year, our role then is once we approve it tonight to not touch it again until we do this next year. Just so that we can hold true to our commitment of telling staff what our top priorities are and then letting them go implement them as opposed to sort of changing our mind all the time. So not to put all the pressure on tonight, obviously if there are emergent things that come up or there's, you know, crises that need to be addressed, it's not like we can't talk about things, but like the goal of this sort of revised process is that we kind of put the stamp on it tonight and then we'll get updates throughout the year. And, you know, we'll probably need to approve contracts or approve other things to implement some of these things, but this is the roadmap then for the budget and for the operations for the next fiscal year.
Right. Yeah, thanks. Get into page 6 here is some of these projects are large projects. They're going to take a lot of time. They might take all year to get done. We got to build a water treatment plant. It's in here, right? Like, I hope it makes the top 10 because we need to do that project, right? So you really have like 9 choices, right? Because we got to build a water treatment plant, unless you tell us not to.
Cancel.
If it's not a priority, then by all means, we'll give the money back to the state and we'll, you know, whatever, figure it out. So you really have 9. So some projects are going to be like that, right? But again, I still think it's still important to identify it as a top priority for the city council. It's a top priority for the city, and we need to be telling our residents it's a top priority to replace our outdated, undersized water plant. That's huge, right? So there's one, probably. There's others that are really simple, right? The example that the mayor and I talked about earlier today is creating a position for a youth council member to be here, a youth council of some sort or whatever. It's pretty small. The mayor could probably do a lot of that on his own, not really a budget impact, but it's still an item. It's still going to take some time. It's still an effort. And so is that ever going to be more important than building a water treatment plant? No, it never will be, right? But it's still important to recognize that that's one of the priorities that we've got for this year. So if it makes the top 10, great. If it doesn't, then we have the conversation after we have the top 10 and we see what that looks like, right? Maybe it's a top 12 with a couple that the city council is going to take on themselves that doesn't have a budget impact, right? So I'm saying top 10. I'm putting an asterisk by it. I got my team here to tell me no, and I got all of you to try to tell me yes. That's what we're going to do. All right, so all that said, we can keep this kind of loose. I'm going to go through and talk at different opportunities. I'll have different members of the management team talk to those action items. I'll encourage you again, just kind of keep it short, keep it in summary. If you've got additional specific questions, we can hit those. But we really want to try to stay out of getting into the weeds and nuts and bolts of it too much. Even at an action item level, it's a pretty high level, right? And we'll get more into it at the Public Works Committee or the Finance Admin Committee meeting. So more to come, but we want to at least get these action items figured out. Sound fair?
Say one thing. I think the other thing that I was trying to keep in mind is like if we're doing our top 10, trying to not have our top 10 be like 10 public works projects and nothing relating to police or finance or administration or parks or anything, or same, not have 10 finance and administration projects and then, Kevin just gets to sit around all year and do anything.
That'd be fun.
So just to say, kind of try to, think about a few for each department. And then, if they have extra time, they can get to other things, but what are the priorities for each?
I have one more thing to add too. There are some further in the document that are replacement of equipment that we have in the CIP document, like replacing the log at Flossie Overman. Those are budgeted, so if the CIP goes through, it is something to acknowledge, but it also is just it's just a replacement project. It's not a huge time commitment. It's replacing something that's been removed and needs replaced. So we do identify that there are a few little things in there that are like that as well.
We'll hit those when we get to them. We'll say, let's delete this. It's not really an objective for an action item for the strategic plan. It's an operational thing. And maybe we should make that distinction a little bit. We have the strategic plan, we have the capital improvement plan, which we're going to approve later tonight. In order to get funded and be in the budget, it has to be in the capital improvement plan. It doesn't have to be in the strategic plan. So there's going to be some things that are in our master plan, like the water master plan, for example, or the sewer master plan, and they get rolled into the CIP. They may not necessarily be in here, and they may not be addressed necessarily in here. I think most of the stuff we've tried to roll into here. Things like a park equipment place, right? If it's in the CIP, it's going to get funded. If you approve the CIP tonight and it's in there, it's going to get approved. It'll be in the budget, whether it makes this top. So that, again, we'll address those when we get to them. There's only a few of them like that in here, but they are two separate documents. They don't necessarily have to match each other exactly, right? Not everything in two documents. If it's approved in here for this year and or it's approved in the CIP, it's going to go into the budget. Both these documents feed into the budget. Okay, makes sense. But they don't.
This is supposed to be like a policy document, whereas a CIP has both policy and operational thing. Like the council doesn't need to approve every time we put in a new swing set if the old swing set's old, but that would be in the CIP.
If we were in February, everything that we had in here would roll over into the CIP, and then we would adopt the CIP a couple months. That we're in April, and we're still working on this because it was a major overhaul this year, as we all know. So with the next year, for example, we'll have this knocked out in February, right? And then anything in here is going to roll into the CIP, and you'll review the CIP in March and April. And so it's just this year. This is just taking a little bit longer, and that's okay. It just doesn't have to be an exact match. Okay, let's get going so we can get through this. Objective 111, the first action item. I've got Mike with a star by that one. Mike, do you want to talk to that one and why that's important for this year?
Yeah, action item one is looking forward to implementing this financial policy for establishing of reserves. We do it now, but it's loosey-goosey. If we get a policy, it makes things a lot easier to deal with. And that's my biggest one I like.
And will that policy be influenced by the utility rate study?
Of course. Yeah.
So there's a timing component to that.
Yeah.
When is the utility rate study supposed to be done?
This will be done by the end of the year, fiscal year.
In the fiscal year.
So this might be like a next fiscal year thing?
25, 26, which is what we're working on.
Oh, you mean by the end of this fiscal year?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, okay, gotcha.
They're working on it now, so it'll
Great,
be done in the
okay.
next couple months. Okay, and then the third one, consider fee adjustments for street and storm, as well as new fees for parks, public safety, and support of the general fund. Chelsea and I both started that. We'll talk through as we get closer to the budget, but the more and more I keep looking at the budget, the more and more I'm getting concerned. That last year wasn't a blip, and that all of the other communities that are struggling for funding, maybe we're not so unique, right? So I think, as again, we'll know more as we get through the budget season, but I think we are gonna need to look at, we always look at cutting costs and cutting expenses. We can always reduce the amount of transfers into future investments, into the land building equipment fund for future projects. But at the end of the day, the state of Oregon has a revenue problem when it comes to cities and counties. We've got caps that don't allow property tax or property value increases to get captured in taxes more than 3% per year. There's some other things that really limit the abilities of cities and counties to get money. I won't go into all that tonight because we're being brief. I don't want to get in the weeds. But that's why that one got priorities for us. We may be in a position where we need to start community conversations about some additional revenue sources. All right. The second and third.
Chris, we're considering tonight already an adjustment for street and storm, for example, right? Isn't that one of the?
That's a utility rate, and we have that in place now, so we're looking at rate increases there.
Right.
So that would be, are those sufficient? Are they good? We know that storm's gonna increase quite a bit as more and more demands come on our storm system.
Yep.
So that would be part of it. The bigger part is like things supporting the general fund. So something support police, public safety, something specific to support the parks, comes out of the general fund. Yeah, streets is kind of a separate utility, and we collect the fee, and it goes to streets, stays in streets. So I'd be looking at all of those. Yeah. Under 1.2, the second, third action items are really the same thing. So I've deleted action item number 2, and Dave wants to speak to action item number 3.
So this last year, when I took over as chief, we ended up doing a wall-to-wall evidence audit. We have about 3,000 items of evidence that we had to put our hands on every one of those items and check those off the list. What we found is that our current evidence management system is just inadequate and very inefficient. We're exporting all of our evidence items to an Excel spreadsheet and having to check those off by hand manually, which can lead to mistakes, and it's just not an efficient way to conduct business. Ended up taking Katie and I about 100 hours to complete that process. I reached out to some of our regional agencies that have moved from our current system to a system called File on Queue, and you can scan most of those items. It's a much more robust system and much more efficient. I would imagine it would cut our time in half probably. The cost for that is $6,500 for implementation and then data migration. So that's migrating all of our old data in, and then a reoccurring monthly cost of $489.34 a month.
So this is one that's showed up in Dave's budget request, so that's kind of getting baked in the budget at this point. But if it didn't hit priority, we may look to have to pull that back out, right? So we're kind of assuming that that's going to be high priority for the council, but we'll know more here in a little bit, right? So that's that one. Under goal 1.3, objective 1.3.1, just because quick, this is for the Philoma 2050, as we're kind of calling it at this point. The visioning process, we talked about this quite a bit as we were building the strategic plan. This would be that process, right? Look for a consultant, look for some funding, have a first meeting, contact all the stakeholders, really get that project up and going. I don't see us realistic getting started on that anytime before, like maybe June, July. But again, if we get that this is a high priority for the council still, we want to move forward. I've made some preliminary calls, but nothing overly serious at this point, other than we think we're going to do it. I've started talking to a few stakeholders. There's some excitement, but again, after tonight, hopefully we've got a little bit clearer path on whether that's a huge priority for the council or not. But fully support. And I'd kind of combine those two action items, kind of fudge that a little bit. It's really one and the same. 2 steps, but that would be the effort, would be those. And I'd be happy to kind of combine those into one for purposes of priorities. Nothing else for theme 1, so we get on to theme 2. 2.1.1. This first one, there's a specific project in the capital improvement plan for adding some on-street parking onto 11th Street and 12th Street between Applegate and Main. So it's in the CIP, it's kind of baked in already, but it doesn't include some of this other stuff, right? So adding to flower baskets, adding on that. Staff is kind of planning to keep adding to the number of brackets and all of that. But we kind of want some guidance from council, like, is this where we want to spend money? Because it costs money and time, and I've got public works employees that are dedicating hours every week to do that. And we want clear guidance from the council. That's a priority to keep building up that for downtown. So it's the banners, flower baskets, the flagpole brackets. I mean, everything that's going on, the new light poles. Do we keep growing that program throughout this year? And then similarly, the second item, Chelsea and I kind of went back and forth on this. We've got a little bit of money left in urban renewal until we hit our maximum indebtedness. We kind of want to max that out before we start talking about closing urban renewal out altogether and entering our repayment only phase. There's more that can be done in the downtown area with those urban renewal dollars. And so it'd be kind of prioritizing those for redevelopment, looking at either the city-owned lots, looking at the facade improvement programs. I mean, there's things to do with that to kind of focus in on that downtown area that would be incorporated. Typo on the second action item under 1.2 that was been corrected. Upgrading Main Street crossing 17th Street, that's on the CIP for 2026, so that might be a good one for like a future date. Main Street crossing at 19th Street, I kind of penciled it might be also a good time to do that one, kind of hit both of those crossings at the same time. I kind of got that penciled for 2026. And then the last action item on the page, we'd actually like to recommend moving that to an action item under objective 3.2.4 on the next page. Well, 2 pages over. Let's just look at that one real quick while we're there. So objective 3.2.4 is prioritize and plan for community gathering places. So that seemed like an appropriate action item for installing cross lighting across 13th Street. This is like the hanging black lights that go across the street, kind of create that real plaza kind of feeling.
Lights with black bases, not black lights.
Lights with black bases or black lights. So you can do LED and they could go black light, red light, green light, orange light for Halloween.
Turn into a club.
Yeah, kind of a placemaking deal to kind of make 13th Street feel more like a gathering space / plaza for events and things.
I just had a quick question. I don't know if now's the good time for a question. Just on the 17th and 19th Street crossings, we talked about ODOT redoing some of the ADA ramps. It really makes sense to try to do it all.
We'll be ready by the time they're ready. So this is one that the 17th Street. Well, both of these were identified in the project that we did at the school district.
Right.
Neither of them are eligible for the Safe Routes for All funding that is like the best funding source for these types of projects. So unless we just want to use like city dollars to do them, which we could, the idea was this year to apply for the grant through Safe Routes for All through the state to be able to do an action plan to identify all of these safety areas, which is very similar to the project we just did with the school district, only this one is through ODOT's view and lens of how we're supposed to do it. And it'll be all encompassing, not just focused on school areas, it'll be focused on like everywhere in the community, which is primarily around the school area. Yeah. But anyway, the timing was to apply for that action grant and do that action plan. And then these would be on the short list of projects that we would go for grant funding through that project. You're much more likely to get grant funding for construction of projects identified once you've gone through their grant establishment program. That said, if there's money in the street budget and we want to prioritize some of these projects, that's what we need to hear from that. Right? Yeah. So, and we can have that discussion if this gets into high priority. If it makes high priority, then we can have a discussion when we're looking at the CIP and look there, because there are some street funds there. It's just a matter of where we prioritize them. Okay.
I guess I just like, do we think we're not going to come in and put things in, tear them up and put in different things in a year?
No.
Okay.
19th Street was mostly striping.
Okay, okay.
17th Street is the light switching out. They can come in and do the 88
Okay,
stuff, and
okay.
we'll be able to work on that, so. But good note, I mean, if they start moving in the summer, we'll make sure we
Okay.
collaborate. Under 213, I've got as a priority for this year to restructure the art committee. Analyze different funding models for public art acquisition and maintenance. I know I'll speak in the mayor's language here. The streetscape's in, we put these great plinths in, it's a great spot for public art. It's not kind of funny to wait 5 years before we put any public art on it. And so it's kind of probably a low budget item for this year, but let's just get that committee up and going. Have them explore. We've had an art committee before in the city. Let's see what they did, revamp it, see if that's the way we're gonna go forward, put some policies in place, start doing some outreach, and let's get some public art on those plinths, like this year or next year, rather than like 5 years from now. So to me, it's a timing thing. It's about finishing the streetscapes before we start taking on new projects. Let's kind of finish what we've got going, or at least get a project started. The idea with the plinths was never that we would have 15 art pieces in 1 year, but that we would start building, and maybe every year or so we would start adding pieces to that collection. So I jump down to objective 2.2.2. First action item, I think I spoke to this briefly, increase funding to REAL, which is Rural Economic Alliance, in order to support hiring a director to oversee economic development in rural and Benton County. We used to give some funding as a region, as a city and as a region, to Oregon Rain, which mostly focused on entrepreneurials and develop an entrepreneurial system and ecosystem. And they've done a great job. They still do that. What we found is over time, they kind of shifted towards Albany and Corvallis because that's where more of the entrepreneurs were, even though we had directly paid them to do work in rural and in Benton counties, as in the small cities in rural and Benton County. And so we've kind of broken off from them a little bit. They still get some funding from the county, and we still fully support their efforts. But what REAL is looking to do is to hire our own director, probably 10 hours a week or so, that just focuses on putting on events that support local businesses, new businesses in the small cities in Lynn and Benton County. So Philomath, Adair Village, Monroe for Benton County, Brownsville, Lebanon's the largest city in our mix, Lebanon, Halsey, et cetera, et cetera. So we meet together about every month. As members of REAL, I attend those meetings. We've got a strategic plan. We have a lot of things we want to get done. But they're all like me. They're city administrators, city managers. They have a little bit of time, and to really focus in on that, we feel like the next step for that to move the needle is to hire a part-time director. They've identified a gentleman that's in the mix with all the stuff that Rain's doing, everything else. That would be a great director. Sounds like there's a lot of interest in doing that, and just really bring a lot of focus into Philomath and the other small cities. So the timing's good. I will say on this one, timing-wise, the other cities are all looking to add more money into their budgets this year to help pay for that position. Everybody's chipping in a few $1,000s, so this would be a budget impact for us of, I gotta look at the exact numbers, probably $3,000 or so in addition to what we are already paying for REAL, to pay for a director position. I dropped down to 2.2.3. I think this starts on the first one. It is obtain grant or urban renewal funding and complete the environmental cleanup of 14th Street property. I put both before. It was trying to get the grant. We applied for the grant for cleanup and didn't get it. So this one I put, let's use the grant or let's use some of the urban renewal funding that we talked about. Let's get the cleanup done at 14th Street. Let's just get that far, right? Before we start talking housing or mixed use, let's get the cleanup done this year. So we can figure out what we want to do with the property. Got some ideas. Everybody does. Let's just get the cleanup done, right? So that's that one. It's on that property for a while. The very last action item in this theme too, just above 3 and 3. I just applied for a $50,000 grant through T-Mobile to be able to put in a pavilion and a digital kiosk at 13th Street in Maine. So it kind of fulfills this. I'm going to know within the next month or two if we get that grant. If we get it, we'll make the purchases, get it going right away. So this might get done this fiscal year. It would be grant money coming in and grant money going back out. So This one's kind of high priority, but I don't necessarily know if we want to put a high priority for like next year. If we don't get the grant funding this year, then I'd want to know where the council stands on that. So don't not vote for this one, but just know it may be kind of maybe we get this one done really early, like July 5th, right? It may be an early one that we get done. The reality is, even if we get that grant, we could still look at another, 6 to 8 weeks for delivery, another month for setup. So it's a high priority. If we get the grant, it's probably a much higher priority. I've already applied for the grant, so if we get the grant and it's not a high priority, we're probably gonna have to do it anyway to get the grant. So vote accordingly. Yes. I don't have a great solution for you on that one. Theme 3, community well-being and quality of life. This one we did a little changes here. A lot of the objectives under 3.1 we feel are really better action items than I think we do when we open the meeting. I would recommend that we add a more overarching objective, 3.1.1, that reads something like increase the total number of affordable housing units within the city. And then each of those items under there would be an action item for objective 3.1.1. And I won't read all of them. You can all read through them. So that's kind of a simple change. I didn't necessarily prioritize any of those for this year, but I think they're all better as action items than objectives. Under goal 3.2, objective 3.2.1, we also felt was a better action item to be moved under objective 3.2.5. On the next page. Put a pin in that one for now. Let's turn the page. 3.2.3 is kind of a repeat. We've deleted that one. It's actually already an action item under 3.2.5. Or we're recommending that we add that under 3.2.5. Sorry. So let's go to 3.2.5 because now we've moved through two things under there. So the action is to create a policy for startup events, and then a separate action would be to create a policy for city facility fee waivers. So when we have nonprofits or for-profit groups that want to use a facility, mostly city park, we have an existing policy now. It's a little dated. It's a little unfair. And so we want to look at that policy, dust it off, and see if we can come with a better policy for free reservations at City Park, Marys River Park, etc. So those will be the two action items under objective 3.2.5. And then under 3.2.4, which is the one we moved to 4, that would be to install the lights on 13th Street as part of that prioritize and plan for community gathering spaces that we talked about prior. So, however, on the management side, we didn't star any of those. We have stars for our top priority projects. All important, just nothing that we felt was like timely for this year, got to get done. So that drops us all the way down to the bottom of 3.4 under great multimodal transportation options. One of the things that is a little timely is this last action item to do an analysis of adding a stop near fitness over 50. I've taken 2 inquiries in the last month or so about wanting to stop for fitness over 50. Quite a few of our residents that go there would like the option of hopping on the bus and going and back. Right now, the bus stays out on Main Street on the highway all the way through there, and there's no stop. You've got to, once you get past Newton, you don't get off again until you get all the way up onto Western, right? So this would be diverting it. Instead of staying on Main, you'd divert on, I can't remember that street. Country Club Road. Country Club. There's not a great stop right across from Fitness Over 50, but as you go up a little further, there's a new housing complex up there that is, the road's been improved, there's sidewalks, there's pullouts. So it'd be up there, which would be, a little bit of a walk, but much closer.
Well, it's fitness over 50, I mean.
Right. So, and, not an overly busy road, but not a, it does have a bike lane on both sides. So it's not like you're right on the road walking, but not overly safe, but not a horribly dangerous place either. So, and this county road, the city can't really do that. Well, it's.
Why there needs to be an analysis.
Yeah. That's part of the analysis, right? Like, can we do it? At this point, I ran it by Corvallis Transit. They've looked at it, said, yeah, we wouldn't do a stop right at the Fitness or 50 just because there's not enough room there. It's not approved. But we would consider putting one up in front. That'd be a great spot for it. We just need to look at it a little bit closer. The city kind of controls that where our stops are. It's our route, so we can kind of tell Corvallis we'd like to have a stop there. There's some funding available to make some improvements and some other stuff. Corvallis has some funding. We have some funding. It serves them as well, right? Because it's one more stop that their residents can also use, hop on Philomath bus and get around. So, and there's that new housing development there that the next stop is up around the corner, so it'd be more convenient for them as well. So there's some benefit to Corvallis, benefit to Philomath. This is just to do the analysis, see if it's worth it. Didn't have anything under 3.5. We get into 3.6. That first action item is one that Chelsea referred to earlier. I'm just going to cross that one off, replace the log and flip through the discovery. It's a piece of equipment. We replace equipment regularly. We don't need the council direction necessarily to replace park equipment and where's that needs replaced. So that action item can just come off. The next one down, the exercise equipment, we have that in the CIP currently for 2026. Doesn't mean it can't be moved, but that's what's in the CIP that you'll see later tonight. So not a huge priority for us right now, but we definitely want to do it, next year halftime frame or so. And then we drop all the way down. Managers, interrupt me if I'm missing one of yours because I didn't star these quite as well. But any of you have anything else on? Let me pause there. Do any of you have anything that I've missed on any of the previous pages? No? Okay. Good. Anything on the rest of page 11?
Question. For 3.7.1, it talks about holding a public hearing. I know we had talked about just trying to do like a sort of more informal conversation with the residents, sort of we do, like just sort of, hey, here's what's going on. What do you guys think? Would that be separate from?
That'd be the pre-step. Yeah, once you do the engineer's report, there's a formal process for doing the LID.
Right.
And the first of that is a resolution.
Right.
And then you do the engineer's report, and then you hold the public hearing.
So this
we could do a neighborhood meeting before that. That would be kind of pre any of this discussion. Yeah. Okay. This is really, once we've decided to move forward, that'd be the first official action item outside of if we wanted to have just a neighborhood meeting and invite 12th Street Road District to do it, or maybe you and whoever else go to a North 12th Street meeting and often we'll get there about it or something. Yep. Staff did not prioritize any of the rest of those in theme 4, or it's theme 3. So it gets us to theme 4, state of community. Dave, do you want to speak a little bit to under objective 4.2.1, that second action item about Benton County emergency management?
Yeah, I mean, that's something right now we're having them come to National Night Out and all their other events. I think we can do a little bit better job getting some more literature out there to, I think council meeting and other events would probably be increased awareness on that.
This is almost one where I feel like it's more of a,
I was gonna say, I don't want to use one of our top 10 for
it sounds like something that honestly, if we just want to pull that off and just do that, maybe just direct us. We've talked about having them come and talk through emergency management for a while. I don't necessarily want to burn it, I don't necessarily want to take it off, so maybe that's just a asterisk that we'll just do that, but not necessarily put it there. So I guess with that, I would just say, let's delete that one. There's other things on there about updating the website, and before that, having an emergency preparedness month. So there's other stuff that we're doing. I really don't want to burn an action item to do that. This seems like you invited somebody to come to your council meeting? Check, right? I mean, we'll do that as good practice. I don't think it needs to be on the strategic plan necessarily to take place.
Well, and even the website is gonna be, if it's getting redone, I would just. Right,
Now, part of the thought on that one was to bring them here to talk to the council specifically, because we get a lot of questions from the council about what are we doing? What is our relationship with Benton County Emergency Management? And so it is to help educate the council. And yes, our website does have better, I think it's just an easier resource page for emergency management.
That may be one when we get to next year, but we kind of already did this, right? And maybe it kind of goes away that way. It's just something that we did when we were just naturally up on the website. So I think it's fine on there. Not a huge priority for Marvin. Feels like something we'll do in process. Top of page 13, another typo, the first action item, North 9th Street, 9th Street. The H decimal. 9. I can go down to objective 4.3.4. Grant funding for and construct seismic upgrades on Neeback Hill Reservoir. Kevin, do you want to talk to that one a little bit? I think you've given an update before. Is anybody unfamiliar with that project? Everybody's got it? Okay, so that was a funding priority, or a priority for us to get that funding in place. I believe it's in the CIP for us to get funding this year and do the project next year. So getting the funding is kind of the priority for this year, construction next year. Under 4.3.5, I spoke to this earlier. The action item is to seek grant funding and complete the ODOT required action plan for our safety projects. Again, that's in the CIP for us to get the funding this year. And I believe on this is one of the rare, so let's get the fund, do the project. There's not a lot of delay between, there's not like an engineering project, anything has to happen. We get the funding, get the consultant, we go. Pretty quick. So that's something we could do this fiscal year. The next one I've got prioritized is back time to add a bike lane to Applegate Street from 15th to 19th Street. That's in the CIP under grouping of projects. I believe it's scheduled for, we're just looking at that this year or next year.
It was. I think it was just in there, but
Not funded.
so it was like one of those things where we had funding. Yeah, it's not. You didn't assign it a year ago.
Yeah. It's on the CIP as a future project. We don't fund it for this year, the year after that.
But there's
dollars could be available for a smaller project like that. It's just a matter of whether it's a priority or not. But we've been talking about some restriping on Applegate Street to pick up bike lane for quite some time. Another one of those low hanging, not overly expensive project, but we would do some public notification because some folks will be losing a parking spot for that. So there'll be some public outreach, notification, purchase some tape, some signage, some other stuff along. So it will be a project. I mean, it's not going to be just go out and right. There'll be some effort to it. Dave, I'm going to let you cover 4.4.1. I think the first and the two probably, those first two action items.
Yep. So this one would have a budget impact of about $4,400 for this next year, and that would allow us to send officers to instructor development courses so we can host some of that training. We have some state mandated training that we have to do every year. If we don't have an in-house instructor, then we're having to hire outside instructors to come in and instruct that. Some of the examples would be use of force, defensive tactics, and mental health and crisis intervention. Pretty minimal budget impact, but report guard project a lot.
how much do you think it would save? Like, because I'm assuming you spend more money sending people off to trainings or hiring.
Kevin, you want to talk to 4.5.1?
The new water treatment plant.
Good.
No, it's not. Yes.
Well said. I get what. Yeah. No.
Yeah, again, that's number one, right? So it's kind of got to get done. So hopefully everybody votes for that one. Put your sticker there first. It's a lot of work. You know, a lot of that, you think it gets contracted out. It's daily touch and go for these guys. I mean, they're constantly, you know, reviewing stuff, looking at bids, talking with contractors, figuring out transportation, working with Fulham Community Services. It's a project, and there's lots of touch points that Public Works is doing. So just because our guys are out there building it doesn't mean it's not an impact on Public Works. It's very consuming. Kevin gets the brunt of it. You know, I feel like I'm overseeing that project, and I'm really not. He's taking the bulk, and a little bit of stuff floods off to me. And it's like, God, it's taking forever. That's a ton, and it's only a portion of what he's doing. So it is a lift, right? It's a big one, and the community should be proud of it. It's huge, big project. The next one's probably you'll have a little bit more to say on. I've got 17th Street replacement. And then the North 11th Street aquifer are the last two that I have started. Do you want to talk about them?
Yeah, the replacing undersized water lines on 17th is another project to increase, well, actually, we've had that pipe break a couple times over the last several years, but it is an increase in size as well to be able to get more fire flows throughout that neighborhood. It kind of goes hand in hand, which 16th is, I think, on the CIP, but not on the project list, but the same thing with 16th Street.
And 11th Street, yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, we're starting at this.
It's in the CIP for this year.
Would be to start investigating the opportunity and the feasibility of being able to use the aquifer storage and recovery. Thank you. Starting with the 11th Street well, which basically is they come in and do tests. We find out if we can, during the winter time when the water's abundant and everything, we treat that, pump it down the 11th Street well, and it'll be a test to see that it doesn't mingle with any of the other. We do use 11th Street well. It has some minerals and a little bit taste different than our water out of the plant. This pushes it looks to see if we can, number one, maintain the aquifer and that water that we pump down there, and also see if it commingles with the other, or whether it just pushes the other water out, and then we bring that nice clean water that we treated already back up in the summertime.
It's one of those where even if we have the water rights to tap into the Marys River, if we don't have to in July and August, because we can tap into our water that we put down into the ground in the winter months, why wouldn't we try to do that, right? So there's a little cost to it. It's kind of an environmental friendly thing to do. And there's something to be said for treating, you know, hot water out of the Marys River as opposed to pulling nice cold water out of the ground as well. So, but there's a lot of reasons why it won't work, right? And you got to kind of line it up just right to get it to work. We just don't know if we can make it work, so we want to test it out.
Budget impact on that, roughly?
CIP for this year, that initial test, I think
23,000.
23,000.
3,000. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so we have about 35 minutes until our regular session. I would still just like to take a little bit of time for us all to talk about anything that we want to push for that maybe wasn't a staff priority, because I really appreciate hearing all that, but there may also be things that you've heard about from your neighbors or just that you know that you want to fight for. So if we could just spend maybe a couple minutes each just going over anything that you think wasn't highlighted or anything you really want to push for, and then we can break and go do our stickers. I think that'd be great. Who wants to go first?
Well, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
The training about for the police officers, did you say mandated training? Like this is mandated training that they would be doing? Okay.
Yeah, we have state mandates, federal mandates, and then also for Northwest Accreditation Alliance, there's mandates within the accreditation as well. So we've got to hit all those benchmarks every 12 months.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that, as opposed to like optional training, not that there's a difference. And then, are we able to change any of these? The wording of some of these actions are, it's kind of like, let the city tell the community, but the focus, I believe, we've been trying to, prioritize as a council is getting community feedback. And so improving that feedback, the ability to, the opportunities for community members to give that feedback might be.
Yeah, if you've got specific language on.
Yeah. So it was. So 1.4.1, on intentional engagement with the public on a regular basis, the second action item, while that is important, maybe we should add another action item that's more like, having more surveys on targeted issues, like to be able to have that feedback of like simple, like multiple kinds of, just,
I wonder if we could just add that to, sorry, where are we?
1.4.1, in the intentional engagement with the public on a regular basis.
Yeah. Could you repeat that word again real quick, Counselor?
Having, providing more public surveys on targeted issues.
So we can write it up there if you're gonna add it.
How do people feel about that?
I think that's an important thing to add. I don't know that I would subtract one of those action
Yeah.
items either, right? Because we do want them to like know what we have to do, so that we can then ask them out of the stuff that we have to do. Looking at this and it's pretty cool, but some of it's like, well, yeah, they get information from the website, social media, and the newspaper. Well, yeah, I mean, but like maybe we could, my decision-making process, this is, you know, like I
guess I meant to,
so it's an additional
action, yeah, that first one was just kind of like, it felt so passive and like less about community members being able to make direct impact on, any sort of actions that could be taken in our community. And so in contrast to that, being able to provide more public surveys on these issues, that might be a bit more, like, multi-voice kind of, I don't know, categorical.
So are you thinking something more of an sort of sometimes can be like, we're doing community engagement, and it's like, here's your pamphlet, or are you thinking of something more dynamic than like Chris at the,
Well, that's, I guess,
you know what I mean,
Yeah.
like at the Sunday market?
I guess, well, that was my thought. Could we just broaden it to just say, like, increase opportunities for public feedback and input?
Yeah, that.
Because then that would include things like counselor copy and
Mhm.
farmer's market and
Sure.
that kind of stuff. Because I feel like I do also hear the city manager's thoughts as sometimes people don't like filling out surveys.
Yeah, but even if it was something as simple, like, if we set something up with Brad, like,
Right.
multiple choice.
Instagram poll.
Exactly, like a poll on, but on news,
Okay. Should probably keep moving. Does that work as an action item for people?
Will the new website have a feedback portal?
No.
We'll talk more about that
Oh,
later. It's usually best to keep your website as an out, but we can look at other options, and that has to do for legal purposes, opening your website up to being in, and you can't ever go back once you've done that. But yes, this is valid. I'll write it up there. If you're all good with that.
Sure.
It's an option.
And then I had one more question. What happened to the action item on transparency of expenditures? We had talked about putting city expenditures online at some point. And that was scheduled, I think, for this fiscal year, or like it kept being like the next fiscal year. And the council had agreed to it, and it's not on here anymore. And I don't know if the council ever removed it.
Yeah, it got captured in some of the newer objectives that we worked on. It didn't seem like it really fit under any of those, and I think my thoughts generally on that were the new website's going to have some of those new features and abilities. Some of it is things that we can implement in the future. Some of it, the new website's going to have new features available, but we're not going to be able to roll all of them out with this first rollout. There'll be some things we can add into it. So if it's something that we want to still address once the new website's out and we've looked at it, we feel like, yeah, there still feels like there's more we can put on here, then I'm not opposed to looking at it then. But I kind of wanted to get the new website up because I feel like that's the primary goal.
Yeah.
Let's get that far first and then see if we want more there.
Okay. I guess I'd be curious to hear information on, because I know he had done some research on it and had experience with it in Newport, I think. That's correct? With the putting the expenditures, city expenditures online.
We didn't do that at Newport, we did it in Albany.
That's where I'm.
Yeah, that was, they did that after a big upgrade to their network, website.
Okay.
And it's been really a quick experience. Took us about a year to get it right.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't expect it any different here.
Okay. That's cool. I wasn't sure what research you had done already and how much had been communicated. So
Did you have anything you wanted to advocate for on there?
I feel like, no, I'm good.
Okay, wonderful. Counselor Irwin, do you have anything you wanted to advocate for, speak to?
With the staff's recommendation for the most part, and
Okay.
clear I pay more attention to like when people are complaining and hear more, like, and I'm more attuned to it, probably like, it's often that they've misunderstood what's happening in general. Say that people's complaints are not valid, but if they understood, often if they understood the totality of what's happening, and so I do, and I know the staff is like focused on getting their work done, but I think as a council, we have a little bit of responsibility to make sure constituents are understanding the work that's getting done. And I don't, things that we do are pretty good, but clearly there's room for improvement because people don't, or seem to be, and obviously some people just take the piece that makes them mad and yell about that, and you can't. like, I guess my thought is I would encourage us, the stuff that doesn't take the staff's effort, but that we've identified as objectives for the city that we can kind of do pretty easily, like I think having a youth council member would be fun and not particularly difficult.
Right.
Depending on, I mean, I guess it had to work, they get a whole packet and everything, it might get kind of crazy, but a blue folder.
Yeah.
One more folder to track for Crystal, but, anyway, so, I mean, I guess I was, you know, and I get in trouble at home for taking more projects, so I'm trying to not, but I still, you know, I'm like looking on here going, well, you know, a couple of us could facilitate that pretty.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
And I think that's just, again, a good reminder, like we're trying to pick a top 10. If we get everything done in 6 months, that doesn't mean we can't do other things. It just means that those are the things that we are committing to getting done, and then anything else we can get done on the side is great. But
kind of a low-hanging fruit.
some of it's high-hanging fruit,
Yeah.
but it's just fruit that we've committed to going and getting the ladder and picking.
Yeah.
I may be over.
But maybe if, you know, we could also identify things that are easy to do.
Right, totally.
In it.
Yeah.
So that, you know.
Absolutely.
We'll take some of those things on the list of 10 as well. I mean, that's.
Yeah, he's like, let's not do hand grinders. Here's the paperwork and phone calls every day. Get it done.
Good feedback.
Yes. Counselor Salta, do you have anything
Uh,
you wanted to highlight?
I appreciate the work that's been done inside this document, so far. I am completely in alignment with what we've discussed so far today. I have to say, spending the last month or so out walking the streets, so to speak, I did 7 miles today, for example, and I can't tell you the number of people that are out engaged, the benches along the line that people are sitting in them, they're conversing with one, you know what I mean? There's something here that got created that I think we want to continue building on. And the more that we create that community sort of centric hub of downtown as it starts to spread out for improving 9th Street, all the things that make it easy to get there, safe to get there, and then it'll start to fall in line, like traffic control and things like that. When you've got a bunch of people around, you know, it's very interesting. I saw a log truck and an RV pulling a boat, trying to duel it out at the end of Main Street as it went back to one lane near Newton. And I thought, this is going to be entertaining. I just watched. This is like, you can't pay for this kind of entertainment. But it's, you know, those are sort of the outlier things. I think the more that we continue to concentrate on the parks and I walked the intermodal all the way to downtown Corvallis from here. It was amazing. It's a beautiful walk that whole way. So, and then that attracts people coming this way. Like, oh, we're gonna, you know, walk into Paloma and things like that. So anyway, that's my soapbox for this, and as we kind of continue putting our resources into the building of the community infrastructure, everything else will start to flourish from there too, including community outreach and being able to, you know, for us being out in the public too, for that matter.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your soapbox.
Yeah.
Counselor Caseman?
Oh, sure, and I think I can be brief. Someone once said that if you don't have clean water coming in and dirty water going out, you don't have a town. And so I'll always want to prioritize water-related things. So those will always be high up on the priority scale.
Yeah.
And then also, as I look at the survey that was provided by the community in 2023, I guess it was, a safe community ranked the highest for reasons to live in Philomath. And so I think we can take a lot of that for our police department. And so if the chief brings some budget items, I think we should take that very seriously. We did the police committee this past week, Councilor Salsa, Councilor Crocker, and myself. And the first part of the meeting was we got a tour of the PD, and we spent a significant amount of time in the evidence room. And so the fact that this was on there,
Personal.
right? So, and I'm sure you'd be willing to do that for any of the other councilors, just as an informational. But it was really interesting, and I think if it's brought onto the table as important, we should trust that and put a lot of stock in that. So there we are.
Agreed. Awesome. Thank you. I'll just go over a couple of things I wanted to highlight too. I think I'll reiterate the community visioning piece is important just because we want to have the next big thing that we're going to talk about in the next strategic plan and the one after that and the one after that. So I think sort of planning for the future. I am also really intent on finishing up some of those like bike and pedestrian improvements from that are already in our transportation system plan, to try to do some striping, do some sidewalks, crosswalks, that kind of thing, which we'll talk about more with the capital improvement plan. And I guess that was the only thing is that we talk about the bike lane in here, but I don't know if there's a place that we could sort of count like general TSP improvements. Like I think if you put your sticker by the bike lane, we can count that as.
Isn't that part of the multimodal?
Is it?
Which is spelled incorrectly, by the way, in
Oh.
case that wasn't caught.
Where
What number is that, Jessica?
It says multi-model instead of.
Oh, yeah. 3.4.
3.4, yeah. Is that what you're
Sure.
talking about?
Yeah, I guess so.
3.4.1.
I guess there was just nothing in here that said specifically
TSP.
like just implement TSP
Yeah.
bike and ped things. So
Oh, fair enough.
I would just argue if you put your sticker around somewhere there, maybe we could agree to count it as that bucket. And then the other things I just wanted to highlight were, I think, informed by this as well as just sort of like small like livability improvements. I really want to make some progress on the security in the parks, both for safe community, but also so we can have restrooms open more, because that is something I hear more complaints about than a lot of things in town. So I would encourage us to really try to emphasize that. And then similarly, and I don't know if Chief has any thoughts on this too, there was one action item around trying to install like radar speed signs on the east and west entrances to town, just because that was one thing of here, visible enforcement of traffic laws. You're more fully staffed, we're able to do more of that, but I think those are like relatively inexpensive ways to have people slow down that doesn't involve an officer.
Indeed, and I think we're looking at some grant opportunities for that, help.
Okay. So just, I think those were a couple things I wanted to kind of highlight because I think they're relatively small, will make a big impact on people's livability. And I mean, like it says in here, people wanted us to have enforcement of local traffic laws and wanted to have accessibility of safe pedestrian ways on streets and routes. So I feel like we're kind of, those are two ways to get us there. So yeah, and then I think I support a lot of what Chris said as well. I think the last thing was just, and this might be something for like Housing Economic Development Committee, but just wherever we landed on that 20th and Main parcel. Because I remember when we bought that, I was like, okay, we should buy it, but we shouldn't just sit on it for 10 years and then figure out what we're gonna do with it. And that was like, 3 years ago, so.
It's on here.
Okay, no, I know, I just wanted to highlight that, like, that we already.
14th Street over that one, but.
Yeah, because I think the other thing that Chris and I have been talking about that I'm really big on is like, I don't want, if we're gonna start something, I wanna finish it. And I think sometimes with a parcel like that, we don't even think we've started it. We spent like $350,000 of taxpayer money buying that lot that we are doing nothing with. So in my mind, we started it. We should finish it. So same thing with like art downtown, all those kind of things of like put a bow on things before we start buying and building a ton of other stuff. But with that, we have 15 minutes.
One more quick thing.
Oh, yes, sure.
I had forgotten, in objective 3.1.4, which is actually an action item now under that overarching
Yeah, sure.
objective, inform the public of Philomath's housing needs. Can we change that so that it's the other way around, where we get input from the public? Or at least get this is what we think we need, and then feedback from the community as well on that, because yes, we have studies, and also like hearing what kind of housing people need and can't get is also important. Incorporating that information into it so that at least we hear like, I I want something small. I don't have kids, like, there's nothing affordable, what
Yeah.
can I do?
How about meet with the public to discuss Philomath's housing needs?
Right.
Kind of more of it.
Yeah.
All right, so there's 24 dots on each of these sheets. Go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and take a recess officially from the, we'll do 24. Go ahead and put one on each action item you're in favor of. Chelsea, can I ask you to do Counselor Crocker's? So they'll get reported up there, the ones that she sent. And then time frame wise, let's see if we can do that in like 5 minutes and maybe give us just a few minutes just to see where we're at.
Okay.
And,
Here we go. For 5 minutes. Calling us back to order for a point of clarification, we are still in the work session, which will be ending soon, so then we can enter the session. But, I know you just got these, so I'm if you've had a chance to tally anything up, or
Why don't we,
do you wanna tally it up and then we talk about it during the regular session item? or-
yeah, we'll
Okay.
bring it up during regular session. I'll get a good time. Pay attention half and tally the other during presentations and things, and yeah, when we get to the agenda item, see where we're at.
Perfect. Okay. Anything else for our work session? I'll just say thank you all for being so engaged in this. I know we did sort of a heavier lift on the strategic than we often do this year. But I think it was good having several new people on board and also wanting the strategic plan to be more meaningful this year. So I know it's been a lot of work, especially for staff. Thank you all. The hope is that it will pay off throughout the rest of the year and years. So thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to adjourn our work session. You have a 1-minute break. Oh, just kidding. Now it's 7.